I was bullied a lot in high school. It got to a point where it was so bad that it kept me up at night. I had spoken to teachers about it, but this wasn't the kind of school where anything ever really got done. And I hadn't told my dad because my mum had recently passed away and he seemed about to fall apart. I loved my dad, and the last thing I wanted to do was put more pressure on him. One day it was the end of the school day and I was heading out the back exit of the school. We weren't meant to use it, the students. It went through the staff car park, but the front entrance was always manic. A small guy like me would end up getting crushed in the crowd of people and oftentimes intentionally shoved and pushed by people trying to get out. Looking back, the way they let all the students just pack into the hallways at once was really bad. But on that day, as I was exiting through the back way, I ended up bumping into a guy called Liam and his mates. He was the school hard guy and, to be honest, gave a lot of people a difficult time, but me even more so. He spotted me and couldn't resist. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was something about my dead mum. It was bad. Even his friends looked shocked, guilty. Well, it just set me off. I'm not a violent or a physical person, but before I knew it, I'd punched Liam in the face. It was a pretty weak punch. Nevertheless, as soon as I did it, I regretted it. We all stood there for a moment, dumbfounded, and then Liam's face turned to one of rage. I turned and ran faster than I ever had before. I ran around a corner which took me behind the school cafeteria, along a walkway, and jumped down through some bushes into the staff car park. Except on the other side of those bushes wasn't the ground, but one of those giant school commercial rubbish bins, and I fell right into it, a bit like you see in those cheesy movies. I hurt my back as I hit the few bags of trash on the bottom, but I didn't make a sound and just stayed there, hoping Liam and his friends wouldn't find me. They did, though. I wasn't fast enough. I remember Liam looking in smiling before slamming the lid shut. I jumped up and tried to push it open, but his friends were holding it down. I then heard something being pushed and shoved at the front of the bin, and then everyone seemed to leave. I waited a few minutes, not speaking. I was afraid they hadn't really left, and then I pushed open the lid. Except it wouldn't move, not even a little bit. I pushed harder, nothing. I pushed and pushed for a while, but couldn't do anything. And then I just sort of sat down and gave up and cried. I should have shouted for help, but I was so fed up and also so embarrassed, and so I just stayed there for ages, quietly crying. Eventually, I guess I kind of fell asleep. I hadn't slept properly in weeks and was constantly tired. I just fell asleep in the rotten food and trash. When I woke up, it was night, and I started to realize I had made a mistake, not calling for help because now everyone had gone home. And then it started to rain, like really rain, a thunderstorm, and all this water started to pour in from the back of the bin. It was dark, and I had no phone, and the water wasn't leaving, it was just piling up. I started to completely lose it. It was raining heavy, but I didn't understand why the water was coming in so fast at the back. I started to scream and scream and scream. I thought I might die, I might drown if I didn't get out of here. But with the sound of all the rain and the school being empty, I didn't even know what good my screams were. I banged and screamed for what felt like ages, and by this point, the water was almost up to my knees. Finally, I heard a voice, a man's voice. I screamed for them to help me, and then I heard fumbling outside the bin and the lid was opening. I've never felt so scared and so relieved ever. It turns out the school caretaker had been worried he hadn't locked the back staff entrance, and that's why he was there. He was the one who freed me. It was just luck that he happened to be passing by. I don't know what would have happened to me if not. There had been a broken drain pipe the bin had been left under that was channeling all the rainwater from the roof into it. To be honest, I still get bad dreams even now thinking about it. I spoke to my dad after that incident and he let me change schools. It's been better since then. A few years ago, before the pandemic around 2018 to 2019, I was at my friend Ellie's house for a sleepover. We were excited to talk about all the middle school drama. Ellie's house was deep in the woods, surrounded by trees everywhere. The closest neighbor was over a mile away and there was a cliff behind her house leading down to the ocean. The night started off well. Our friend Kim was there too and we played games like Truth or Dare and Hide and Seek. As it got late, we decided to take a walk down the gravel road to the other houses. Ellie asked her mum, who said it was okay, so we set off. After a while, we noticed a man walking on the other side of the street. He was wearing what looked like winter clothes, even though it was warm outside. As we walked by him, we all noticed that he smelled really bad, like something rotting. It was absolutely disgusting. Kim held her breath and Ellie ran into the woods and almost threw up. We felt uneasy and this guy's smell had ruined our mood, so we turned back, holding our breath as we passed him again. But then we saw him following us. We started walking faster to escape his foul smell, but he sped up too. We tried to get away, but he kept getting closer. We picked up our pace, almost jogging, but he still followed us. Then Kimmy looked back and screamed. I turned to look. He was sprinting at us with something sharp in his hand. We ran as fast as we could, screaming for help. It would have been exhausting, but we were pumped with adrenaline. After about a minute, he stopped chasing us, but it was absolutely terrifying. He just stood there, watching us as we ran away. Back at Ellie's house, we locked the door and decided not to tell her parents, who were already asleep. We set up our sleeping area and tried to relax. Once we calmed down, we threw on a movie. About halfway into the film, I heard footsteps outside the window. I thought it might be a deer that Ellie always fed, but my friends reminded me of the strange man and told me not to go outside. Once the film was over, the other two fell asleep, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I looked outside and saw movement in the woods. I grabbed a flashlight and saw the man again, this time completely naked. I woke up Kimmy, but when we looked again, he was gone and she didn't believe I was being serious. Around 4:30 a.m., I was finally drifting off when there was a knock at the door. I was curious, so I checked the peephole, but there was nothing. I tried to get back to sleep, but woke up again at around 5 a.m., feeling off. The terrible smell was back, and then I heard footsteps. I screamed and shone the flashlight. The man was in the corner of the room. The other two woke up and started screaming as well, and he ran out. Ellie's parents called the police, and I went home after giving my statement. My parents were relieved to see me. Later, I found out that the man had killed 5 people and had hidden their bodies in an old shed. The stench was from decaying flesh. Looking back, I realized how lucky we were to escape that situation. Sometimes me and my friend would do sports and stuff at the end of the school day, and that would mean by the time we finished, the school bus had gone and we could either walk home or take a public bus. The public bus was really unreliable and took forever anyway, so we usually walked home. The quickest way to where we both lived was to take a shortcut through this wood. We had taken this route loads since we found out about it at the start of the year, and it had been totally fine. But it was December now, and so night started really early. It wasn't until we were on the trail through the wood we realized just how dark it was. It felt a lot different in the dark. My friend was using his phone's camera light to highlight the ground. We were about halfway through when we heard this sound coming from our left. It was a rhythmic kind of sound. It sounded like digging or something like that. Without thinking, my friend turned the light in that direction, and there was this figure back in the woods. I don't think we would have been able to make them out if it hadn't been for their eyes reflecting back at us. Shape-wise, it seemed like a man, so I nervously said hello, but the figure didn't respond. Then we heard this crack right behind us, like someone stepping on a stick. Startled and really panicked, we turned back around, but there was no one there. We flashed the light back to where the figure had been, but they had disappeared. We were completely terrified now, and we just ran, not even bothering to check the trail for obstacles or anything like that, just madly running. We got out of the woods, but didn't stop running until we got to my friend's house, which was closest. To this day, I don't know what the figure was or what made that sound behind us. This might have been a silly decision, but the next day, we went back with 2 more friends to investigate, and there was a strange hole that had been dug in the ground near where it had happened. But after that, we never took the shortcut through the woods.